Okay, what I'm doing here, this is my Ma's Loom. It's an ORCO Model 70, 2-harness. They're actually a copy of the old Union Loom, a regular 2-harness loom. And I'm rewarping it for, and this is done in sections. And there's a 24 strings between each set of pins. So I got to roll that warp all on. There's a crank on this side that you turn, and it feeds off of a spool rack back there. Okay, that is the rack there that holds 24 spools. These ORCOs, much like the Union, they actually have a built-in spool rack down here, but I prefer to use the one back here only because then you can keep an eye on it, make sure no spools run out and stuff. But if you don't have a regular spool rack, these work fine. This thing just clips on here, just a guide with holes in it, and then you slide it along as you do it. But I'm going to roll on now, so I'll get back when I get all of these filled up. I do so many turns, then I'll cut it, move on, do it all the way across. But as I do this, you have to count, or you will screw it up and then you waste warp. Okay, now that's all on. Now I should explain what I've done here. All of these intersections I put 40 turns on. The two outside sections I only put 30 on. Now that way you can weave a 4-inch difference. So you can start out narrow and then go wider. Or what I'll do here is I'll start out at the full width, then it'll run out on this outside section, and you drop those and just use the intersections. That way you can do two different widths, but also the advantage is this will keep a higher tension than what this will. Because the problem most people have in weaving is the outside strings get loose. If you keep this slightly smaller than this, you get a little better tension here. You don't run into quite that problem. It isn't something that's a big problem if you've done it a lot, but for people starting out, they always have trouble with the outside strings loosening, but it's just a matter of they get stretched, but this helps. Okay, now that these are all wound on, I'm going to start tying these onto the old ends and pull through. Now normally I would start on one side and work across, but this has got some flaws in here in the reed, so I'm going to actually start in the middle tying on and work both ways to get, because there's some odd gaps in the reed from operator error, let's say. Okay, I've been tying the strings onto the end of the old strings. And there's 336 of them that I knotted. And then I will pull these knots through. And these, I'll show you when I get to the front there, it's a little unusual in the warping. The trick is to get them all straight. Okay, now it goes through these, and it's warped to the front, two in the back. It alternates that way. They come through here, then this lifts every other string. But that's why I have to double check and make sure I got this right. But now I've got to pull those knots through. And this is a bit tricky. But I'll pull these through and I'll get back. Okay, I got all the knots pulled through, but now what I have to do, there are some gaps in the reed where a string had been broken and put into the wrong spot, and sometimes they get doubled up in the reed. So I have to go through with the hook and get them to the right position again. Not a big thing. And that might be the one I need. But I'll do that. I'll get this all squared away. I'm picking up every, there were springs that had broke, so there was gaps in between. I started way across here, moving over, picking up any broken ones as I went and moving them over. That's what this warping hook is for. You slide it in, pull the string through. So all the way across here, I found I worked up, I got 3 empty spaces that I'll move over to the edge. That should do it.
Yeah, see, you pound harder than I do. But I should, yeah.
But I'm in a habit of that.
But you do it.
Yeah. Okay, I'll explain what I'm doing here now. Just testing it to make sure that the pattern is holding true. But the one thing I wanted to explain, this is what's called double slade, where there's 2 strings running together. Normally in a plain weave you'd have one, one would go up, one would go down. That's a plain weave. This is a plain weave, but instead of being single strings, it's double strings. It actually makes a better rug because it pushes the material up so that the strings are protected and you can pack it a little tighter. Like, you can see it on this one, where you can see the 2 strings all the time. It works good for a 2-harness loom. That works the best. You don't use it for cloth or anything, but for rugs it works. That's it. Now, you could weave a little if you want to.